every morning for almost a year, sir, you've left that same crisp $10 bill. The young waitress held it up with a curious smile. Why always 10? I have to know. The well-dressed man studied her for a long moment but said nothing. Instead, he smiled quietly, lifted his coffee cup, took one last sip, and turned toward the exit. Just before stepping out, he glanced back. Someday, Grace, I'll tell you everything, he said softly. She watched him vanish through the front doors with no idea that the answer to her question was tied to a promise he'd carried for years, a promise that was about to reshape both their lives. Grace Bennett had been serving tables at Miller's Corner Diner for nearly 2 years. At 24, she juggled two demanding worlds. By day, she wore an apron and greeted strangers with warmth, no matter how worn out she felt. By night, she sat in nursing classes, chasing a dream she'd held onto since childhood, to become a pediatric nurse. The road wasn't smooth, but she never let herself quit. Each morning, right before the breakfast crowd rolled in, the same man walked through the door at 7:15 sharp. His name was Nathaniel Reed. Quiet, composed, always impeccably dressed. He claimed the corner table near the window, asked for black coffee with buttered toast, thanked her without fail, and never lingered past 20 minutes. And before leaving, he'd set down a fresh $10 bill beside his empty cup. Every single morning, without variation. At first, Grace assumed it was simply generosity, but after watching the pattern repeat for months, never more, never less, she found herself wondering what was behind it. There's your favorite regular, one of her coworkers whispered with a smirk. Grace laughed, reaching for the coffee pot. He's not my favorite. Sure he isn't, the coworker teased. Then why do you light up every time that door opens? Grace rolled her eyes, unable to fully hide her grin. I smile at everyone. Not like that, her friend shot back. Before she could argue, the bell above the entrance rang. She didn't even need to check. She already knew. Right on schedule, Nathaniel settled into his usual spot and unfolded his newspaper while he waited. As always, Grace brought his coffee before he had to ask. You actually remembered, he said, smiling. You've had the same order nearly a year, she replied. I'd make a pretty bad waitress if I forgot that. He chuckled. Fair point. Moments later, she returned with his toast. Big day ahead? She asked. The usual chaos, he answered. Back-to-back meetings, endless calls, a flood of emails. She laughed. Sounds draining. It is, he admitted. So why start your morning here? He looked around the small diner before answering. It's calm. Grace smiled. Guess that's one way to put it. It reminds me life doesn't have to move so fast, he said. For a beat, neither spoke until another table called her away. Better get back to work, she said. Of course, he replied. Before he left, he set down payment for the meal, then quietly placed another $10 bill beside it. Have a good one, Grace. You too, Mr. Reed. She picked up the tip afterward, exactly $10 as always, and smiled to herself while tucking it into her apron. One day, she murmured, I'm going to find out why. The weeks rolled on and their brief morning exchanges became a quiet ritual. Morning, Mr. Reed, she'd say, pouring his coffee. Morning, Grace. How's school going? She looked up, surprised. You remember I'm studying nursing? He nodded. You mentioned an exam last week. I passed it, she said proudly. Knew you would, he said. You're more sure of that than I am, she laughed. People who put in the work you do usually come out on top, he told her. His words lingered with her long after she'd walked off to serve someone else. As the morning rush filled the diner, Nathaniel noticed how she helped an older man carry his tray, patiently waited while a child couldn't decide what to order, and greeted every single guest with the same genuine kindness. It wasn't performance, it was simply her nature. When he stood to leave that day, he wished her luck with her evening classes. Thanks, she said. Don't stay up too late studying. I'll try, she laughed. He left his payment, plus the familiar $10 bill, and walked out. She watched him go, shaking her head with a small smile. Still don't understand you, Mr. Reed, she whispered. But I think there's a story behind that money. A few mornings later, the diner sat unusually still, giving her a rare breather. While refilling his cup, he spotted a thick textbook tucked under the counter. Nursing studies? He asked. Finals are coming up, she said. Nervous? A little, she admitted. There's just so much to remember. From what I've seen, he said, you never do anything by half. I think you'll be fine. She smiled. You're good at pep talks. I just say what's true, he replied. She felt herself blush before the kitchen called her back. Better go before my boss thinks I'm slacking, she joked. Wouldn't want that, he said. She started to walk off, then turned. Thank you, by the way. For what? For believing in me. Sometimes that's all a person needs, he said. She carried the next order with a smile she couldn't shake. Before leaving, he left the bill plus another crisp 10. Have a great day, Grace. You too, she replied, still watching the money on the table. Same as always. Somehow, it still made her smile. The following week, Grace greeted him warmly before he'd even reached his seat. Morning, Mr. Reed. Morning, he said. You look exhausted today. Up till one studying, she laughed. Thought finals were still weeks off, he said. Exactly why I'm starting now, she said. Don't want to cram at the end. Smart move, he said. I just hope it pays off, she admitted. It will, he said confidently. What makes you so sure? Because every morning I walk in, you're already smiling before the doors even open. Then you work a full shift and study half the night. People with that kind of drive usually get where they're going, he said. You always know what to say, she laughed. Had good teachers, he replied. A coworker called her name. Better get back to it, she said, turning to leave. Grace, he said. She looked back. When you become a nurse, she laughed. You mean if? No, he said. When? Neither spoke for a moment. His certainty in her chipped away at her own doubts. I'll hold you to that, she said softly before returning to work. 20 minutes later, he left his bill and the usual $10 note. Have a wonderful day, Grace. You too, Mr. Reed. She watched him leave, smiling for reasons she couldn't quite name. Her mornings always felt lighter once he'd stopped by. The next day, she checked the clock. 7:10. She brewed fresh coffee and lined up clean cups. 5 minutes passed, the bell rang, but it wasn't him. She checked again. 7:20. In nearly a year, he'd never once been late. She kept working, trying not to worry. By 7:40, his table was still empty. Waiting on your regular? A coworker teased. No, she said quickly, just hoping he's okay. I'm sure he's fine, busy guy, the coworker said. I know, she said, still hoping he'd walk in. As the rush began to slow, the bell rang again. There he was. Sorry I'm late, he said, walking in. Meeting ran long. Relief flooded her face before she could stop it. I was starting to worry, she admitted. I'm touched, he said gently. Well, your table looked lonely, she laughed, a little embarrassed. I'll try not to disappoint it again, he chuckled. She brought his usual without asking. When he finished, he thanked her and left the familiar $10 bill. See you tomorrow, Grace. I'll have your coffee waiting, she said. For the first time, both of them quietly realized their mornings just weren't the same without the other. The next afternoon, Grace left work early to spend a few hours at the library before class. As she stepped outside, traffic came to a halt. A row of black SUVs pulled up outside the tallest building on the block. Men in suits climbed out, opening the rear door. To her shock, Nathaniel stepped out, straightening his jacket as people greeted him with handshakes and respect. That's Nathaniel Reed, a woman nearby whispered to her friend, one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Grace froze. Billionaire? She watched him disappear inside the glass doors, stunned. The quiet man who loved black coffee and peaceful mornings at her little diner was one of the wealthiest men in America. Suddenly, everything clicked. The tailored suits, the effortless calm, the expensive watch he never mentioned. Yet he'd never once revealed who he really was. The next morning, as she prepared his breakfast, she couldn't help smiling, seeing him in a completely new light. He arrived at 7:15 as always. She greeted him, unable to fully hide her curiosity. You seem like something's on your mind, he said. I found out yesterday you're one of the richest men in the country, she said. So the secret's out, he smiled. You never told me, she said. You never asked, he replied. I honestly thought you were just a businessman who liked a quiet breakfast, she laughed. I do like a quiet breakfast, he said, and they both laughed. When he finished eating, he paid and set down the familiar $10 bill. She held it for a long moment. Can I finally ask you something? Anything, he said. Why is it always exactly 10? His smile faded. He looked at the bill in her hand, then took a slow breath. Because that $10 changed my mother's life. She stayed silent, sensing something new in his voice, not sadness, but gratitude. If you have a few minutes tomorrow, he said quietly, I'll tell you the whole story. I'd like that, she said gently. Watching him walk out, she realized that Bill had never just been a tip. The next morning he arrived early. She'd already prepared his coffee. You remembered, he smiled. I told you I would, she said. After a sip of coffee, he looked out the window. When I was 8, my father died, he began. My mother had to raise me alone. She listened quietly. She worked 2 jobs, one of them at a diner much like this one. She never complained. She always said as long as we had each other, we'd manage. One winter got especially hard, he continued. We fell behind on rent. Some nights she'd say she wasn't hungry so I could eat more. Then one morning, a customer left a $10 tip. The next day, another, and the day after that, another. My mother never learned his name. She only knew that someone chose kindness every single morning. Those tips helped us buy groceries, pay bills, get through one of the hardest winters of our lives. Before she passed, he said, looking at Grace, she made me promise her something. What was it? She asked softly. She told me, if life ever blesses you, never forget what a small act of kindness can mean to someone. He set another $10 bill on the table. So once I made it, I found a diner like the one she worked in, he said, looking around the room. And every morning, I leave $10. Not because it's much, he said, but because once, it meant everything. Tears filled Grace's eyes. She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Your mother would be so proud of you, she said. Months passed. Grace graduated nursing school with honors, and true to his word, Nathaniel sat quietly in the audience, clapping as she crossed the stage. Afterward, he waited with a bouquet of white lilies. You came, she said, beaming. Wouldn't have missed it, he replied. They're gorgeous, she said, admiring the flowers. Well earned, he said. Over the following months, their bond deepened into something more. Some evenings he'd meet her after her shift for long walks through the park. Other mornings they still shared breakfast at the same little diner where it all began. Neither rushed what was growing between them. Then, one crisp fall morning, he arrived before anyone else. When Grace brought his coffee, she smiled. Beat me here today. Wanted to, he said. He reached for his wallet and set down a $10 bill. Knew you'd do that, she laughed. He rose, walked around the table, and looked into her eyes. This bill reminds me where I came from, he said. It reminds me kindness can change a life. He took her hand gently. And meeting you reminded me kindness can also lead you to the person you're meant to spend your life with. Her eyes filled with tears. I've shared my mornings with you a long time now, he said. I'd like to share every tomorrow too. He knelt and opened a small velvet box. Grace Bennett, will you marry me? Through happy tears, she laughed and nodded again and again. Yes. Yes, I will. The diner erupted. The cook rushed out, waitresses wiped their eyes, regulars smiled and applauded as he slid the ring onto her finger. As they embraced, Grace glanced down at the $10 bill still resting on the table. What began as a mystery had become a promise, and in the end, it had led them both to the greatest gift of all, a love built on kindness, gratitude, and the small, quiet moments that change everything.